Good evening. And welcome to everyone who's joining us on the internet. We were last talking about the fact that your will and God's will are one, are the same, are identical, are the one and same singularity, if you will. But this is only true when you're willing not to hold yourself separate from God, when you're willing to yield to the Father's perspective because it's the only true perspective about everything. It does not mean that your practice of free will or of a private will of your own is one with the Father's will. In your independent stance, separate from the Father, formulating what you want, what your goals are, how you're going to accomplish them, and how you're going to convince others of the reasonableness of what you want so that they won't stand in the way of it. You are practicing willfulness, which simply means the practice of force in the attempt to sway other minds to be in agreement with you. Your will is always, always, always a manipulation of events, circumstances, and people through an expression of intense and unyielding energy, if I may put it that way. Through commitment that is unyielding to a single idea which you have imagined, which you have made up, and which does not coordinate with, does not fit in with everyone else. Which is, of course, why you have to bring force to bear upon the situation to get everyone to agree with you. The Father's will is a movement of mind. It is not the attempt to accomplish anything. It's not a means of accomplishing a goal. It's the movement of mind. It is a movement of that which is perfect. It is the movement of that which is undivided, unfragmented, singular. And that movement is creation. Creation that embodies and reflects perfection, harmony, the loveliness of love called beauty, as exquisiteness, perfect coordination of every aspect of the visibility and tangibility of the movement of mind that is called creation. No force is brought to bear. It is not an expression of strength. Omnipotence is not infinite power. Omnipotence is simply presence, unopposed. You got that? Omnipotence is simply presence, unopposed. Singularity again. It's your function, as we've said before. To be in such harmony with God, to be in such a state of dependence rather than independence, a state in which you are present with God without any other intent in place. So that you can experience, we'll say, God in you. So that you might experience what God is being from His perspective. Because I'll tell you something, His perspective is His gift to you. His mind is His gift to you. You get fouled up by thinking you have a mind of your own that you must use well. And you try to do that. And as long as you are doing that, you are preoccupied with your concepts about yourself, about your duties, about your responsibilities. And you're not available. You're daydreaming, in effect, and not available to that mind in you, which is God, which is your salvation, of course, because it's you experiencing your right mind. The last sentence we read was, you and your Creator can communicate through creation, because that, and only that, is your joint will. You communicate through creation, through conscious participation in the movement of mind that is creation. It doesn't mean you can communicate through creation by taking a creation such as these flowers and making a gift of them to your girlfriend or your boyfriend or your wife or your lover or your friend. It doesn't mean using creation to communicate with. It means, as I said, you're not standing apart from the mind of God that is your mind and participating in the conscious movement of mind that is creation, so that you with God might look at everything that has been made and recognize yourself in it. That's the singularity, And that's the creation that you communicate through. Continuing. Divided wills do not communicate because they speak for different things to the same mind. One says yes, one says no. One says I agree, one says I disagree. One says this is true, the other says that is not true. Constantly, simultaneously, in the same space, to the same mind. This loses the ability to communicate simply because confused communication does not mean anything. What would happen if you walked into a room and the person in the room says, "Quick, help me, I've lost my lap. I can't find my lap. It was here just a moment, and when I got up, it disappeared. You've got to help me find my lap." This person is not speaking sense, but it sounds like sense. And if you think, "Oh my God, I didn't even think about it, but I've lost my lap too." "Yeah, I'll help you find your lap, sure." And now you appear to be in agreement, and you're both apparently engaged in a mutual task to find this other one's lap. And along the way you say, "As soon as we find yours, you've got to help me find mine because, tit for tat, I helped you, you'll help me." "Oh yeah, I'll be glad to help you." And my goodness, it sounds like communication is occurring, doesn't it? It sounds like interaction is occurring. It sounds like meaningful relationship is occurring. And yet, nothing is happening. No lap has been lost, no lap can be found. And the search for it is the accomplishment of nothing. Continuing, a message cannot be said to be communicated unless it makes sense. How sensible can your messages be when you ask for what you do not want? What would be an example of asking for what you do not want? Father, help me to see how to close this multi-million-dollar deal quickly, easily, harmoniously. And then the unsaid part of it is, even though I know it's taking advantage of many organizations, many people, help me to conduct my business deal here in a swift, succinct, businesslike, and fair way. In other words, you're asking God to help you act in an independent way. Independent from God in that you didn't ask God whether the deal, the way it was set up, was really fair. And also because you're holding yourself apart from your brothers with whom you're making the transaction and seeing them as different from you and seeing them as someone whom this deal could cost something, but for you it would make you a great deal of money and cost you nothing. You're asking God to help you be successful at functioning independent of Him and independent of your brothers, which means alone. You're asking for what you do not want. You're asking to have your separateness confirmed to you. Which is very lonely and full of fear and suffering when you get right down to it. You're asking for what you do not want, but you appear to be including God by praying to Him. You appear to be joining with God, but you're joining with God to have Him confirm your unjoined state. You see, you're asking for what you do not want. You're asking for what you want to get, the carrot out there. But you're asking for what you do not want. Yet, continuing, as long as you are afraid of your will, and here we're talking about your real will, this is precisely what you will ask for. You may insist that the Holy Spirit does not answer you, but it might be wiser to consider the kind of asker you are. Are you really asking a sensible question, making a sensible request? Are you expressing an intent that the Father placed in you, that therefore truly expresses your will? Continuing, you do not ask only for what you want. This is solely because you are afraid you might receive it, and you would. What do you really want? You really want peace. You really want the experience of wholeness. You want the experience of perfection. You want the experience of guiltlessness. You want the absence of suffering. That's what you really want. But in order to have what you want, you have to sacrifice being an orphan. You have to sacrifice the independence that you so highly prize. Continuing, that is really why you persist in asking the teacher who could not possibly teach you your will. You persist in inquiring of your best judgments. You insist upon inquiring of your capacity to reason. You insist upon requesting of your memory and your experience. You insist upon inquiring of the learning about human nature and life as you have been defining it that has occurred in you by virtue of your putting bits and pieces of information together in a manner that makes sense to you and seems to hold water and helps you to feel secure. You ask of the sense of self that you have created in an imagined state of independence from your source, which cannot solve your problems because independence from your source is the only problem you have. And this sense of self that has been developed on the basis of independence, exclusivity from your source, has not the capacity to reconnect you to your source. And so it will always confirm your independence and ultimately thereby your suffering. Again, that is really why you persist in asking the teacher who could not possibly teach you your will. Of him, you can never learn it. And this gives you the illusion of safety. Why? Why safety? Because it's not going to upset the apple cart, is it? It isn't going to upset the status quo. It isn't going to upset the developed sense of a decent personality or human being that you have created. It doesn't violate your very best sense of yourself that you have worked so hard to create. Yet, continuing, you cannot be safe from truth, but only in it. Again, you're all afraid of truth because you think it's going to uncover all that's erroneous in you. And so truth becomes something you must be safe from. But truth reveals what? All that is true about you. It uncovers God right there where you are. You can only be safe in truth. Reality, continuing, is the only safety. Your will, we're talking about your divine will, is your salvation because it is the same as God's. You see, when you got your divorce from the father, and you set up house on your own recognizance, so to speak, on the basis of your own best thinking, you moved into an unsafe realm, a place where you cannot feel peace because you have cut yourself off from the source of your peace. And what is the source of your peace? Knowing what you are. Now you are devoted to this sense of self. And you believe that you can somehow, in this unsafe existence, this unsafe world you find yourself in, that somehow you can, through a sheer mental forcefulness, determination, and commitment to consistency of your thoughts and ideas, create safety for yourself. And you think that's your salvation, and you struggle very hard to accomplish it. Again, Backtracking. Yet you cannot be safe from truth, but only in it. Reality is the only safety. Your will is your salvation because it is the same as God's. And what you're calling your will, your right to free will, your right to forcefully and determinedly accomplish things, is not your salvation. It deprives you of your salvation. Why? Because it deprives you of being united with your whole mind. As mind, instead of a mind with beliefs that constitute its reality. Your will is your salvation because it is the same as God's. The separation is nothing more than the belief that it is different. The belief that what is different? Your will. That you have a will. That's your own. And the excellent exercise of it is what gives you respectability and worth and value and meaning. The separation is nothing more than the belief that it is different. Now, continuing, no mind can believe that its will is stronger than God's. It's simply an impossibility. No mind can believe that its will is stronger than God's. If then a mind believes that its will is different from His, not stronger, but different, it can only decide either that there is no God or that God's will is fearful. In other words, if a mind cannot believe that its will is stronger than God's, then it's a given. The omnipotence of God's will cannot be done away with. And so if you say, I'm going to have a will different from the Father's, you're going to have to do something with this thing that won't go away, this undeniable omnipotence of God's will. And so in order to survive in some degree of equilibrium, some sort of what the ego calls sanity, we're going to call it stable insanity, something has to be done with this thing that won't go away, the omnipotence of God's will. And one of the things that can be done is to wipe it out of mind completely, to ignore it completely and say, there is no God. You see? Either you wipe God out completely by totally blocking it from your awareness and disallowing it from occupying your mindsets and your beliefs and your words that you use, etc. Or you arrive at the determination that God's will is fearful. Why fearful? Because if you accept the idea that there is a God, in other words, if you don't block out the unavoidable conscious awareness that God's will is omnipotent, then you're face to face with the fact that your will is a lesser will than God's. Right? That you stand in second place, so to speak. And because God's will is stronger, it is a constant threat